Do you even think BlackRock has started allocating to Bitcoin? No, as British HODL, I do not think that BlackRock or Fidelity has even started allocating to Bitcoin, let alone tried to make a splash in the markets. How do I know this? There's a couple things going on. Firstly, if I look at the outflows that are coming out from GBTC, and then I look at the inflows that are going into BlackRock and Fidelity, it looks like the inflows into BlackRock and Fidelity are outflows from Grayscale. That's what it looks like to me. I also think about it like this. If they were going to put any amount of money into, because the reason why I'm talking about this is so many people are saying, oh my God, look, BlackRock, Fidelity started putting money into it and it still went down, therefore there's no demand. You guys are morons if you're thinking that. The reality of it is this. The outflows from GBTC, which is like $4 billion, has basically been distributed to cash, to other things that people obviously needed to take care of, and into these other funds. I would be extremely surprised, and people are going to get shocked when I say this, I would be extremely surprised, and by the way, I don't have any insider information. I'm just guessing here based on what I can see in the market. I would be extremely surprised if they have deployed more than $500 million combined. Now, why am I saying that, and why is this so important to pay attention to? Because it means that right now what they're waiting for is the selling pressure to die off so that they can start executing their trades. Remember, if I work for BlackRock and you work for BlackRock, and I manage the AUM of our clients, our existing private clients, and you work on the iShares team and your job is to execute the ETF, well, here's how the conversation between us would go. I would call you and say, hey, what's the order books looking like? We got a couple $1 billion that we need to allocate into Bitcoin. And you would reply with, everyone's selling the shit out of GBTC and the order books are flooded with sell orders. So just hold your horses. I'll let you know as soon as it's done. Then you'd put the phone down and call me back in a few days or a few weeks or whenever it was and say, hey, these order books are drying up. And how do we know that? JP Morgan just came out today and said, we think the selling is pretty much done. So you would call me and say, hey, I think these order books are drying up on the sell side. If you want that capital allocated, now's probably the time to do it. And I'd say, cool, I'm sending you over the $2 billion in your account. And then you'd start executing that into the ETF through the algorithmic buying that's going on. Despite all of that, the algorithmic buying that's going on, we're still seeing $100 million a day go into these ETFs, and they're basically reacquiring all of this Bitcoin that's been dumped by GBTC. And now we're getting to the point, like when JP Morgan just today on the 25th of Jan just came out and said that we think the selling is done, that you start potentially seeing the capital actually getting deployed. And should we talk about exactly how much capital this is before everyone talks about their bearish bullshit narratives? The BlackRock Bitcoin Fund has currently got $1.8 billion in it. To give you perspective, that is 0.018% of BlackRock's total assets under management. 0.018%. And my thought process has always been that I think that BlackRock and all these other asset managers will get to a 1% allocation. Well, do you know how much capital it would take for BlackRock to get to a 1% allocation with $10 trillion? Who the fuck is trying to disturb me while I'm talking? Right, let me close that, right. Do you know how much capital it would take to get to a 1% allocation for BlackRock? $100 billion equals a 1% allocation. And we're currently at 1.8 billion. That's basically the same 1.8 billion pretty much that's left Grayscale. I don't even think these fund managers have even started allocating yet. And then obviously today on the 25th, BlackRock just announced that tomorrow on the 26th, they're hosting a webinar to teach their advisors about Bitcoin and the Bitcoin products and all this other stuff. So it's now just starting, right? It hasn't even begun yet. So what I think you're going to see here, and by the way, $100 billion for a 1% allocation is just BlackRock. That's not including Fidelity and all the others that are out there. There is the top 500 asset managers on earth control $130 trillion of capital. If that gets to a 1% allocation, you're talking about a $1.3 trillion net purchase of Bitcoin. So if I was them, and I see a sell the news event happen, all I'm going to do is hold back that capital, just start eating and trimming away at those orders and allow the market to come down and cascade down. Once that selling pressure is exhausted, start increasing the amount of purchasing I'm doing to scalp all of those Bitcoin out of the market. And then really at some point, the demand is going to meet the lack of supply. And that's what I think is going on. I don't even think BlackRock has even started buying. $500 million maximum, in my opinion, between BlackRock and Fidelity at this point. There is so much more buying here to come. And again, this is why one of the reasons why I started my YouTube channel is because, like I said, people like my parents would just miss this. Why? Because their advisors are not even telling them about Bitcoin until BlackRock gives them permission to do so. And even right now, if they work for Vanguard, for example, Vanguard's not even giving them permission to do so. So they're going to be left behind because the financial advisors are either uneducated or got their heads up their asses because they've been forced to put their head up their ass. So this is the reason why it's incredibly important to start learning about Bitcoin and start learning why you need an allocation right now as these market developments are happening. And this is the first time really that an asset going through a securitization process like this, we can even have this conversation like this on social media, and you can gain a position and understand what's going on in the markets, right? And how market functions work. And so, this is really what the purpose of my YouTube channel is about. So please subscribe. Please subscribe. Send it to your friends who are also not being advised by their wealth managers properly. And then send it to the stupid wealth managers as well. And again, it's not the wealth managers' fault most likely, because wealth managers love to make money. We all love to make money. Wealth managers love to make money, right? And so at some point, they'll be given permission to actually make money on Bitcoin. At that point, they're going to need to know what it is about Bitcoin to actually pitch it to their clients. And what they need to know, and what you need to know right now, is that BlackRock and Fidelity haven't even started buying yet. These orders that are coming in, the market is trimming up and chomping at all this Bitcoin, and these guys haven't even started buying yet. At some point, they're going to turn on their demand side, and that's when you're going to start seeing Bitcoin get taken out of the market. And so you got to stay patient. If you're in Bitcoin, you stay patient, you hodl, you follow the 3 rules to Bitcoin, and that'll be it. Right? But for everyone else who's new, you've got an opportunity here to acquire Bitcoin while BlackRock is still positioning itself to put in the couple $1 billion, $3 billion, $5, $6, $7, $8, $9 billion of AUM that they need to actually put into the asset to reach a certain allocation that they will have an internal guidance on, right? And the other thing I want to point out is that, again, like I've said, I think Bitcoin's going above $100,000 in this year. What that means is that my message of getting to at least 1 Bitcoin is going to become irrelevant faster than anyone can imagine. So what I've done is try to think about what I'm going to do after that happens, because at some point, me speaking on social media becomes irrelevant. I've always said this is a finite opportunity, and I don't know whether I'm going to be around after that or not. So if you look in the description box, I've set up a place where we can keep in touch if you would like to keep in touch, if you've gotten to above 1 Bitcoin. Because if you haven't gotten to 1 Bitcoin, your objective is to get to 1 Bitcoin. If you've gotten to above 1 Bitcoin and you'd like to keep in touch, check the description out and we can keep in touch if and when I decide to drop off of social media. But ultimately, despite all of this, remember, BlackRock has not even started allocating yet. Fidelity has not even started allocating yet. A few hundreds of millions of dollars is nothing to the overall AUM that they're managing and the overall target for allocation that they will be aiming for. But ultimately, despite all of that, there are still always only 3 rules to Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, you shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy.